hello everyone. How's everything going? After discussing about the demand and supply, and then also talk about the elasticity. Now we are moving into the consumer theory. Generally speaking, that we have the consumer side, which is represent to demand. We have the the supply side, just the production. Respectively, we will I will introduce you about this consumer theory. It's more focused on like the focus on the demand, and then that the next chapter we will talk about the production, that how to optimize our production decision, also like regarding those cost issues, okay, production cost issues. The consumer choice, or let's say that usually I would call this consumer theory. What does that mean, that the consumer choice? And then that what is the the change in income or the price will change our consumption. And then that will be a little bit regarding behavioral economics, and also like regarding the let's say that the consumer's preference, consumer's perceptions, those kind of things. But what I like the consumer theory is more focused on that only on this let's say the demand, okay, on the consumption side. So we know the demand curve, which is a downward sloping curve. But behind that, we didn't, go through anything that's very specific. Why this price with this demand quantity demanded? Let's say we have this consumer theory behind that to show us accumulate, become this consumer, become the demand curve. But keep that in mind. This is in our microeconomics class. Micro means that the individual, okay? So we're talking about the individual, let's say, product or individual service, whatever. This is not like the macro. It's not the aggregate level. It's first of all, personally, I like this is because how we measure, how we optimize our consumption. So we know that we have, all of us, we are facing the budget constraint. It can be the income, it can be the wealth, right? Since we have limited resource, what we try to optimize or what we try to maximize. In this case, I will introduce you one concept, which is regarding the utility. You can think about the utility as the level of satisfaction, or let's say that this can be represent your happiness. But it's not like a very specific concept. People might have very different levels of this utility. We are talking about utility, and then we talk about the difference in utility. For example, if you ask me that to play TikTok or watch TikTok or running, what you prefer? So I would say that I will give high utility to running, okay, but the less utility to watching TikTok. Let's move on. Here we're talking about the very specific investment choice. This is regarding the education. As you know, this is not new, but somehow they said the higher education is general as treated as a good investment, because the rate or the the rate of investment, which the revenue of investments, ROI, pretty high, right? But generally speaking, it is correct, because we all know we are facing. We have introduced you the opportunity cost. There's no such, a thing that the free lunch, okay? So everything, it costs. But in this case, if you stay in the school, in the, study in the college, you are not only pay for the tuition, but you are also spend your time. Your time can be something, like you can spend those time to work a part-time job, and you can earn some money. So this is time, this is resource, this is about, let's say that the efforts. So there are so many costs. I just put this quotation mark. That's a very broad concept, okay? But generally speaking, that the utility can be different, because if you spend the time that you are, invest your time, money into this education, which give you higher utility. If you are not spend the time, not aiming to get the degree, but instead you go out to work at the part-time job, a low-paid job, probably that give you a low utility. Use myself as an example. So I give up my previous full-time job, pretty high-paid job, that I decided to pursue my PhD, degree. That means I give much higher utility to the PhD degree rather than making those money or let's say working as a full-time, let's say, senior manager. I just quickly show you this how to say, the theory or this kind of evidence. So somehow that I would ask you to stay a little longer, and then get the a higher degree. It doesn't mean it has to be a full-time student, but you can choose now or later. But keep that in mind. Keep learning. Education is a lifelong journey. Okay, don't stop learning or stop educating yourself. I use the consumer theory to show you that how we can use different, let's say, that utility to measure. Usually that this is a theory that we need to introduce you that we have the budget constraint. Okay, although in this case, we don't call this a limited resource, but it's similar thing, right? Simply speaking, this is the income. Everyone, we are facing different level of income. So we are facing different budget constraint. I consume certain thing, or by spend money or doing something that we will gain the utility. Although here this is using the satisfaction, but probably that you can interpret into other things, sense of achievement, happiness. Just keep it simple. We use the satisfaction derived from this consumption. Okay, so this is like the benefits. This is not just the dollar value. Okay, so you cannot use this. You cannot measure, your satisfaction by the dollar value. I have to say that the more money might give you higher satisfaction, my utility, but in this case, we needed to, measure in a different way. But we are using the utility, and then there is a let's say the unit, the utility, the unit for the utility is something that we call the U-tile, which is the U-tile. And then also we will give a let's say a utility function, which is U equal to, X is one product, Y can be another product. So this can be a long function, but try to keep it simple because as I explained to you before, we can only measure this into the maximum is a 3-dimension, okay, diagram, but it can be further, but we cannot visualize that, right? So we are using 2 products. Let's keep in mind 2 products. Can be, okay, so one is like a pizza or food. The other is your leisure, spend money on your leisure, okay, or let's say spend money on other entertainment, activities. So there will be another, let's say that we call the concept that which is we call it the marginal utility. So because we're talking about like if we consume additional product, that the additional utility will be in a decreasing, trend. So keep it simple, like if we eat the first, let's say hamburger, it will be perfect, right? But if we eat the second one, okay, it might be still okay. The total utility increase, but the second hamburger give us less utility, okay? But imagine if we eat 10 hamburgers, okay, then the 10th hamburger gave us low, very low, even 0 utility or even negative, okay? So that means that we will see let me draw a diagram like this. This is a diagram like show you like this is increasing, and then later on it will be like in a decreasing trend. This is we call it the marginal utility, okay? The total utility is increasing, but at a, let's say a lower rate. And then this we call the diminishing marginal utility. Each marginal utility of a good consumed product provides less of an additional to the utility than the previous unit. So the first one can be 10 utility, 9, 8, 7. So that means that we have a diminishing marginal utility. I want to introduce you something different, but I think that you won't hear that in other class because it's pretty advanced. It's pretty let's say complicated, but I try to keep it simple. We talk about the utility function, right? We assume that we have 2 products, X and Y. So in this case, we can draw a curve. We call it the indifference curve, okay? Indifference curve, meaning on this indifference curve, this is a combination of the quantity consumed for, let's say, good X or good A or good B, right? So in this case, it's 15 good Y and then 50 good X. Okay, so C is another combination. But along this indifference curve, this will show you the total utility is the same. So that is why it called the indifference curve. But if we use a 3D visual, let's say diagram to show you, and then you will see this is more like a mountain shape. Why mountain shape? First of all, it's a diminishing marginal utility. It's climbing, but at a lower or let's say decreasing rate. And then the second thing is that will be like this, the surrounding, that's the curve along that on the same height, okay, on the same height that this is represented to a, the same utility. So the indifference curve is something that, from the mountain that project on the ground, and then we draw this indifference curve. But imagine that in the three-dimensional view, and then you see a mountain. Okay, so this is like I use the pencil to draw that for you. It's not very clear, but I think that you understand what I'm talking about. The mountain shape is represent a very specific utility function, which is the u equal to u, x and y. Okay, so and then we can calculate. We can take the derivative. We can calculate the marginal utility of x and the marginal utility of y. But this is not, I don't want to cover that in this class. But just showing you that the x and y with the utility function is like a mountain shape. Okay, and then the indifference curve is something that it's project on the surface, and then we can draw this 2D view. Don't forget, we have talked about the budget constraint, right? So actually, everyone, we have different budget constraint. The budget constraint is more like a, let's say, a surface, okay, a plane, okay, a plane that if the plane is touched on the surface of this mountain, this is, we call it the optimized point, okay, optimized point. That plane is more like, later on I will show you the budget constraint. That plane can also be projected on the surface. It become a straight line, or let's say that we call it the budget constraint line, okay? I will show you quickly. Indifference curve or indifference map, meaning that on the mountain, along the mountain, we can draw many of those curves, right? Although in this case we draw 4, but imagine that it's a mountain that we can draw as many as we want. But this is just for the visualization purpose. That will be the budget constraint. As I said, the budget constraint is representing let's say that a plan, right? Everyone, we are facing a different plan, meaning that our budget constraint is different. So we are more like the plan is like someone is higher, someone is lower, but eventually that you will see that the plan and the mountain can be touched together. The budget constraint is something that always there will be a point, let's say, touch that the mountain. Okay, but this one is a 2D view. 2D view is like that the budget constraint that project to the 2D dimension, okay, two-dimensional view. All right, so in this case that we are talking about the movie and then the t-shirt, okay? So that means that we can choose, to consume, to spend, that's another consumption, assumption that we want to spend all of our money, okay? Don't talk about the saving at this moment. It's not relevant. So we spend all of our money. We can choose T, the point T, to spend all of our money on the movie, or let's say that we spend all the money on this t-shirt. But in this case, that we assume that the income is 56. One day, the idea that why I introduce you that the mountain and then the plan to touch on the mountain is that point is we call it the maximized utility based upon the budget constraint. Or we call this is optimized, point. In this case, that is a very sophisticated mathematics behind that. This is, I took my, let's say that the advanced microeconomics at the first year of my PhD program, challenging, okay? But in this case, that I only introduce you the simple conclusion. Okay, we are talking about the marginal utility per dollar. Okay, so we want to find the point, the touch point, but there is a rule behind that, because the marginal utility per dollar should be same for the two products, X and Y. The marginal utility divided the price is more like once they're equal to each other, that means the additional satisfaction, the additional utility gained from purchasing the goods is the same, okay? Purchasing the goods X or goods Y is the same. And then we won't change. So if it changed, it become like, it's moving around. And then there's a, kind of motivation to change the combination until this marginal utility per dollar for the two goods become exactly the same. In this case, that we are maximize our utility, okay, by spending. I use that this marginal utility per dollar spent is, same for both goods, or we call that the band per buck. It's the same for the two goods, okay? And then this will become like a equilibrium, or either you call it equilibrium or like a stable point. All right, let me stop here for a while.